And I'm going to tell you right away a couple things, just so you know, so you are not surprised. If you don't know by now, I am a crazy dogo lady. I have no children, I am not married, and I own my own business. So I am in many ways in a privileged financial position because I live in the United States. I live in a very expensive area, but an area that also has very high salaries outside Washington, D.C. And because I don't have children, basically all of my disposable income that isn't going to building my retirement home, which a lot of it lately is going to because building a home is expensive, I basically spend it on my dogs. I am 50 years old and I figure I can afford it. It's what I want to do. I'm comfortable with it. But I'm actually kind of nervous about revealing it because you guys are going to go crazy. You're going to go crazy. You do not have to do this, and you don't have to do this amount of investment to have a Dogo Argentino. I'm just telling you what I personally do in my situation, and I do want to be transparent, even though it makes me nervous because I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of haters. Hey guys, what's going on? It's Nicole from Dogo Argentino, USA. This is my older bitch, my mama dog, my special girl. She's Serena. She is my import from Russia. So in today's video, we are going to talk about the scary, frightening costs of owning a Dogo Argentino. And first of all, I do want to let you know that this is what I spend. This doesn't necessarily translate to what you will spend. I live in the 7th fastest growing county in the United States, and it's a really expensive area. I live outside Washington, D.C. So if you don't live in the United States and you don't live in a very expensive area, that's going to profoundly affect a lot of your investment in terms of what you spend. Now, a lot of people are hung up on how much the puppy costs to begin with, and that is probably one of the least important aspects of how much you're going to spend, because the puppy only makes up for maybe 10%, maybe 15% of your overall cost of ownership. So although it's important, if the overall cost of ownership is significantly higher, you have to kind of ask yourself whether or not you can afford the dog. So I do want you to know that if you don't live in the United States, this video probably isn't going to help you. You should click away. It's just a bunch of numbers that are relevant primarily to the US. So that's important. That's important. So I have a little list because I wanted to make sure that I did not forget anything. And I'm going to break it down in the things that I think that anybody would basically have to have. And then we're going to go into some things that are more nice to have or specific to what the circumstances are for a person who's like me, who's interested in showing dogs. So I'm going to start with Zeus. Zeus was a top quality puppy. He was a show prospect. Show prospects with breeding rights are always more expensive. He cost $4,800 for just those breeding rights. I spent another $100 having his dew claws removed on his front feet. I spent $450 having his ears cropped, and I spent $450 having him airshipped to me. So that is a total of $5,800 just for the dog. I did not have him neutered, and I'm not going to have him neutered, so there is zero cost. But if you're planning on altering your dog, you have to include that cost. And it varies based on who does it and what part of the country that you're in. So do bear that in mind. So when I first got him, I did not feed raw. I fed kibble because that's what he was on at the breeders, and so he didn't immediately get into raw. And I fed a decent quality kibble, not the most expensive, not the least expensive. It was about $60. And like I said, that's what the breeder fed him. And so that's what I weaned him off of when I started going into raw. I spent about $100 on treats. Treats are really important if you're going to do some training. And probably my very favorite treat for training purposes is dehydrated lung. And there will be links in the description underneath this video if you want to see the types of treats that I was feeding, the type of kibble that I was feeding, toys. So toys are an ongoing issue with a Dogo Argentino. They're very rough players. They have extremely strong bite power, so their jaws are really, really strong. And I would say that on average, I spent about $100 on toys, which were easily destroyed within the first month and a half. Now, something I do want to point out that's important about dogs and dog investments, you can, if you have good advice, spend less money, for sure. I learned a bunch of things by trial and error about this is going to work, this isn't going to work. I had never, when I first got into this particular breed, one of the things I was unprepared for was their bite strength in terms of how strong their jaws truly are. They are in the top 10 of dogs in terms of bite strength. They're at the low end of that top 10. I think they're like 9 or maybe 10. It's about 502 pounds of pressure per square inch. But nonetheless, what that means, what that translates to is a lot of bite strength on a toy. And even if the toy is marked as indestructible, there are actually very, very few toys that are. And I do have a video, if you want to look in the corner, I'll try to link that to some toy choices and the reason I made those choices. So one of the things that we had to do right away was take our puppy to the vet. And so in my area, just the vet exam with no medication is $150. And most contracts are going to require that you have the puppy examined within 3 days to a week. Because if there's something to be found wrong with the puppy, then your health guarantee kicks in. But also you want to make sure that your puppy's in good health, survived whatever transport was involved. So for me, my bet was $150 for a general exam. Now, my puppy had 2 rounds of shots, but needed a 3rd round. And that 3rd round of shots was $45. In my particular county, you have to have a dog license, and it's a lifetime license, but the fee is $10. So I've heard that being actually very low in terms of urban areas. I've heard people say they pay as much as $50, $60 a dog if they are not altered, and that it's an annual fee. So I thought I made out pretty well with 10 bucks. My dog came not registered with AKC, but eligible to be registered. So I had to actually pay the fee to actually have him registered, but I had the right to register him, and he was registered by the breeder as a puppy from a particular litter when he was born, and the AKC registration fee was $30. I bought a crate. I bought a Midwestern crate, and I bought a ginormous crate. I bought the biggest crate I could get. And I did that for a couple of reasons. I didn't want to have multiple crates, or at least that was my logic going in. In reality, I do have multiple crates because I have crates that are more transportable and crates that are less transportable, and I'm actually probably going to buy some new crates sometime soon. So the crate that I got my puppy was a Great Dane size crate, which you don't need a crate that large for a Dogo Argentino because they are a large breed but not a giant breed. Now my dog is now 2 3/4 years old, and he's 101 pounds, which is completely right about where they should be for a male. But I was told that, and so I got a giant crate because I was led to believe that this was going to be a giant dog. And that is my own fault. So if you don't do research and somebody misleads you on some level, I feel like it's sucky that they misled you. But on the other hand, if you had done more research, so yeah. So needless to say, I have a crate that was way, 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 way too big. And the problem with that crate, it's a fantastic crate if you don't intend to move it. The crate itself weighs 80 pounds. So 80 pounds is a lot for a crate. So it's not really transportable. Yes, I can collapse it. It's a good quality crate, but OMG, way too big, way too big. Okay, so when I was at the vet's office, we had deworming, heartworm, flea, and tick medication, and that all rolled out to be $135. And I should say, when he did his exam, he did do a fecal exam, and that was part of his fee for examining the dog. I got a basic leash, a basic collar. I spent $40. Now, I should talk about that. It took me a lot of collars until I got the collar that I like, which is those big, thick nylon collars. I'll link it in the description below if you're interested in. It's the most common product that people ask about. What collar am I using? And I went through a lot of collars. But if you had just gotten the right collar from the get-go, it would be about $40, the right collar, the right leash. I spent $20 on dog bowls. I got the steel kind. Oh, here. Oh, did I interrupt?
Did I interrupt? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm sorry, you go back to sleep. I'm sorry. Yes, I didn't mean to wake up your nap.
Okay, so I spent $20 on bowls. I spent $100 on an orthopedic bed. And on a side note, that wasn't the bed that I'm currently sitting on. I am currently sitting on the Cadillac of beds, the Caranda bed. And a Caranda bed is amazing for a couple reasons. I'll link it in case you're interested. First of all, it's the toughest bed out there. It's gonna last the whole lifetime, and they can't chew it up. It's just, there's no chewing it. You can't get to it. So it's got an aluminum frame, and it's got like marine grade nylon that's coated in vinyl, so no fleas can cling to it or get embedded. No mites, no ticks, no bugs. I wish I had gotten this right away. I didn't. I also have a pad to it, and the pad's nice because you can unzip the pad. It's a heavy canvas. Let's see, I don't know if I can reach the pad. I took it off for this video. Oh, here we go. Here's the pad, and it's a very high quality, and again, it's something that you're gonna have for life if you go ahead. And some of the things in terms of costs that I notice is, if you know what to buy, and a lot of times you don't, but if you know what to buy and you just spring for the quality item, then that's the end of the expense associated with that particular thing. But unfortunately, I did a lot of trial and error because the dogs that I owned were not as rugged as these dogs. So I've owned a lot of different breeds over my lifetime. I'm a second generation, if you don't know, if you haven't been here before, I'm a second generation dog breeder, dog trainer, dog owner, dog enthusiast, dog competitor. I show in primarily conformation. I train obedience and field for my own purposes. I spent about $100 in miscellaneous supplies. So what do I mean by miscellaneous supplies? That was going to be things like enzymatic cleaner, for any little potty training accident, that kind of thing. Okay, so now I'm going to go into some of the investments I made that you might not need or might already have. They're more pricey, but I do want to talk about them. So I had my Dogo Argentino DNA tested. I had it done by Embark, and it was $200. And there's a couple of reasons I had it. I had the expensive version of the test done because I wanted to check for genetic diseases, and he's completely clear for that. And the other reason I wanted to do it is, in the dog community, it's less common now, but it does happen that there are some people that are less reputable that do what they call hanging paper. Hanging paper is a process that prior to common DNA testing was pretty rampant in the dog community, and they would basically take a puppy that may have totally been purebred but from a different mother or a different father and sell it with the more desirable mother and father and say, oh, this is an offspring of this champion kind of thing. And without DNA testing, you wouldn't know that. So I wanted to make sure that the dog was indeed purebred, and I wanted to make sure that the dog didn't have health problems. So I personally chose to get some DNA testing done. If you want to know more about DNA testing and the many different benefits of it, I would love to do a video. Just leave me a comment below if you are down for a DNA testing video. Okay, I installed a top of the line, the most energy efficient pet door that I could in my sliding door to my backyard. I installed it myself, but the door itself was $500. And the reason the door was so expensive, you can find much cheaper pet doors, was one, I didn't want to cut a hole in my home. I also wanted the door to be very energy efficient. Glass doors are not amazing, but I spent $500, that's how much it was. Now, as I mentioned, I'm not a professional dog trainer, and it was very important to me that my dogs were very reliable off leash. And so I paid for a 2-week board and train. It was by far one of the best investments I've ever made besides getting the dog itself. And that cost $3,300. So at this point, I spent $5,800 for the dog. I spent $5,490 in supplies startup cost. So that was an $11,290 startup fee. So let's talk about some of the other things that are specific to me that you might or might not need. I accounted in my budget when I got my dog for 2 weeks of dog boarding for vacation, that I was going to go on vacation once a year. These dogs are a specialty dog in the sense that they're a guard dog. And I don't want somebody who's used to a Labrador taking a guard dog for me. So I just assumed I was going to have some luxury pet boarding. And 2 weeks of luxury pet boarding in my area is $1,526. I go to dog shows. The first year I went to 2, and I'm going to break down how the dog shows cost for me. Your cost could be entirely different. It was basically around $100 to enter the dog show. It was about $300 to stay at a hotel for 3 nights for the dog show, and there was about a $700 cost in terms of getting food and gas. The dog shows were very far away. I did 2 of them, so that's $1,100 times 2, so that was a $2,200 investment to go to 2 dog shows. If you live in an area where dog shows are more common or closer, it won't be as high, but that's how much it was. I had a custom dog show lead and collar made. That was $150 to have those made. I got the dog show photo when my dog got his championships. Those were $50 a piece. I had a fancy pedigree. I had a photocopy of his pedigree, but I had an official pedigree made from the dog registry. That was $45. I got an exercise pen, again, for the dog shows, and that was $100. This Caranda bed, like I said, I wish I had gotten this from the get-go. I didn't. It was $170 for the bed frame with the marine grade, the actual platform of the bed, which is a marine grade fabric, and it was $43 for the cover. So that's the cost. That is the cost. I understand that it's crazy. Now, I do want to talk about how some of those costs change through time. It's up to you. The dog treat budget is crazy. It's super high. I buy $439 worth of bully sticks a month, which, if in case you're wondering, that works out to about 100. I have 3 dogs. 3 dogs, 1 bully stick a day for 30 days is 90 bully sticks, plus 10 left over in case something has to happen in terms of rain. Like it rains and they'll get an extra one because they're bored. So yeah, I spend a lot. I also spend about $30 a month on dehydrated chicken. I spend about $10 a month, and those are treats specifically. Again, links in the description. $10 on dehydrated lung. I have switched over to a raw diet, and I'm not going to go into those costs because they are so specialized, but if you want to know the cost of feeding a raw diet, it's so variable. I'm not even sure it's worth making a video on, because it depends on whether you're raising the livestock, hunting the livestock, buying the livestock from the supermarket, buying the livestock from a farm. The majority of meat that I buy comes from farms. So, but I do buy some things at supermarkets, and of course the tier tends to be like the supermarket is the most expensive way to get it, and raising it yourself is the least expensive way to get it. But I will talk about that in another video. Again, you can comment if you're interested. Okay, so I hope that you found that super, super helpful. Now, one thing that I did not spend money on that many people would need to spend money on and would be a major, major investment is if you had to fence in your yard. I got my first Dogo Argentino already had a fenced yard, and when I got my second, I decided I was going to move into a larger property. And so that also had a fenced yard, and that was the number one decider of which house. And I liked the yard on this particular property the best because it had a 6-foot tall privacy fence, which, let me tell you, a Dogo can absolutely get over if it's motivated. So don't think that the fence is stopping that dog in a bad situation, because that dog can hop that fence if it needed to or wanted to. My dogs are not escape artists. They don't want to leave, but they could. I guarantee you, if I was screaming outside that fence, all the dogs would be over that fence in a heartbeat. They can jump so high vertically. It is crazy. And of course, with any kind of like wind up, they can definitely clear the fence, because the fence in my case is the privacy wood fence. So the framing of that fence faces in the yard, and the solid batten boards face out of the yard. So it already has essentially a parkour area that they could put their paws on and continue to leap over, which is why I know they could clear the fence if they wanted to. Not to mention, I have seen a number of squirrels taunt them. Squirrels are the enemy. Just so you know, my dogs think squirrels are the enemy. So if you had to fence in a yard, I went and got a quote just for this video, and it was in my area, and it was 6 foot, and it was a privacy fence, and you had an acre of land. You would be looking at an investment of roughly $15,000 in my area. If you did it yourself, significantly less. If you did chain link rather than a wooden privacy fence, significantly less. But if you don't have a fenced yard, you need a fenced yard. So there you go. So you have heard the craziness. You now, the skeleton is out of the closet. Hopefully you will take this with a grain of salt for several reasons. One, I am a crazy Dogo lady, and I spend way too much on my dogs, and I don't care. They're my family. I'm into it. I have the money. Judge me. Go for it. Two, I live in an incredibly expensive area in the United States. If you live in a less expensive area, if you live outside the United States, these costs are going to be useless to you because you're not going to spend anywhere near as much. To a certain degree, costs are based on what the market will bear, and the market will bear a lot outside Washington, D.C. because it is such an expensive area. Three, you don't need to have dogs that are show dogs the way mine are. My dogs are expensive dogs. You can get an awesome Dogo Argentino that does not cost anywhere near as much. So for example, if you were to buy a Dogo Argentino that was out of breed standard in terms of coat, let's imagine that it had one spot on its butt. That would be out of standard in terms of coat. If it had a little spot, it's still a purebred. It's a recessive gene. Occasionally coat faults come out. If you got that dog might only cost you maybe between $1,000 and $1,500, obviously significantly less than the $4,800 I paid for Zeus. You would want to know that food is incredibly variable. Again, what type of kibble you're feeding. Are you feeding raw? You know, things can go up and down. And of course, it does help if you know what to buy, like the Coranda bed. Had I bought the Coranda bed, my life would have been much better, much sooner. But I bought a foam bed. It got destroyed pretty much immediately. It was a fairly expensive bed. It was $100, but it wasn't Dogo proof. You know what I'm saying? The Coranda, Dogo proof. Your dog is not going to. I've never seen any dog destroy these beds, and these are actually the beds that a good quality dog boarding facility or a good quality rescue or a good quality shelter is actually going to use. And part of the reason they're using them is because they last forever. The dog can't chew it up. They're lightweight. Obviously they're sturdy. I'm a big girl. I've got a big dog on here, so I weigh roughly 180 pounds. My dog weighs roughly, 95 pounds. So this bed is already like totally fine, not in any way stressed by that amount of weight. These beds actually can hold much more than they're rated for. I want to say I think they're rated for 250 pounds, but I can guarantee you, because I've had all my dogs in a cuddle vest on this bed before, and I have lots of these, by the way. This isn't the only one I have. Because like I said, crazy dogo lady. Anyway, I hope that this is transparent. I hope that it is very helpful if you're wondering what the initial investment is, but also if you are just curious what types of things that I bought in terms of the bed, so you don't have to spend crazy money for something that's not going to last. I want you guys to have a dogo-tastic day, but only if you like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications so I can make you more content. Huzzah! Have a great day.